Hey guys, welcome back to the Patti Martin Real Estate Group YouTube channel. My name's Adam Wachtel. We have Jennifer Adams and of course, Patti Martin. Welcome guys.
Thanks, Adam.
Hey, Adam. Yeah, thanks for having me back.
And of course, let's get right into it because there's a few things I want to talk about with the stats in January. It's a very interesting market this month, and I want to know if it's going to continue or if we're going to see some ebbs and flows in this market kind of going forward. So the board has come out and said that the market ended in 2023 in a balanced market territory, but January began shifting back in favor of sellers as the pace of newly listed properties did not keep up with the jump in home sales. As we started this year, I know the team definitely started off pretty quickly. Are you seeing this in both the buyer side and selling side? What can you guys say about that?
You guys have been working harder than me.
That is not true. I think we've all been working really hard. So I think what we see is because of the lack of inventory, I think we're switching back to that seller's market. I really do feel like sellers are commanding what's going on here. To a certain extent, if your property has been sitting on the market for a little bit, there may be that sense of balance and there may be that sense of opportunity that I think we saw in January. And that's why a lot of people came off the fence and did buy. But I think it's swinging back. Like I see multiple offers on properties, not all properties, but some. What do you think, Patti?
Yeah, it's not consistent. So we have pockets of very big interest and then not so much in some product. But, today we did an offer on something that was pretty, it's a nice piece of property, very easy to figure out really what value is. And we were with 7 offers and, exceeding the asking price substantially. So that's a seller's market. And you could see it happening. I mean, when I priced that particular property, I knew that there wasn't anything like it, and I advised the sellers to be edgy with the expectation that we would see some increase. But I think that they were pleasantly surprised by the extra bump we got just because of the lack of inventory.
Well, there's the extra buyers coming to that property. So the board has come out and said that in the January 2024, there was 1,427 sales. This is up 40% since January 2023. But it's 20% below the seasonal average. So I guess what I want to know is, are we kind of seeing this purchasing in all price points? Or are we looking at this as more of a bulk buying, like $1.5 million and below? What are you guys seeing?
I'm back to it's just in pockets. So again, just talking to a realtor telling me that over a certain price point, we were showing houses this weekend over $4 million. And they're very slow. So it's a very slow market for product moving. And then, that 1.5 to 2, that's a sweet spot for a detached home right now in our area. And in Vancouver, Adam, you can speak to that with your listing on 45th. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a funny market, but it's way faster coming out of the gates this year. Remember last year? So those stats that you just quoted, that makes a lot of sense because last year it was very quiet in January. We're all wondering, maybe there was too much snow on the ground or I don't know, but it was very different, very different.
So I recently did it. Yeah, I think so. But I think that what we're going to need to really watch is what happens with inventory. And I mean, I feel like a broken record talking about this, but I went and did a CMA. It was for a 2-bedroom.
Sorry, before you begin, what's a CMA? Just for everybody.
I went and did a comparative market analysis. Sorry, we get so relaxed and chatting. It's almost like we all know. So thank you for kind of stopping me. But I went and did a comparative market analysis for a client who will be selling a 2-bedroom view condo in Tsawwassen. And what I see in Tsawwassen is in January, there were 52 homes for sale. And then coming out of the gates in February, there's now 62 in attached choices in Tsawwassen. So, those are 10 more. will those get eaten up by sales, or will we start to see inventory kind of creep up? And then this will be where this all kind of changes. But, I'm so shocked because we talk about interest rates all the time. You haven't mentioned interest rates and the fact that we've seen some stability in interest rates, and how that may in January have helped people come off the fence and buy.
That's a very good point. I think people are getting closer to, I think people are thinking they're closer to a rate cut, and there might be more confidence in purchasing now, hopefully riding the rate down. But I'm cautious on saying that the Bank of Canada is going to cut rates. The minute they cut rates, it'll spur buying. But the problem is that even if they do cut rates, it doesn't mean that they're not going to go back up even a quarter point, and like right after that. So it's almost like okay, wait and see what happens to the bank's rates, wait and see what happens in the markets, drop rates, and then if there's a spur of buying or unemployment doesn't go up, if unemployment continues to go down, rates go back up. And then it's, status quo for longer.
I just see it that I think that sense of stability is helping people to say, you know what, we're going to go for it. These numbers make sense. We can afford it like just the way it is. If they do happen to go down, great, because then when we remortgage, we'll have a lower payment. But for now, let's jump in and let's do it. I think
that seems to be what our advice was the past few months. Get the property.
Yes, just get in. The other thing is that we, over time, you accustom to what rates are. And there was that initial shock because it was a big change overnight, really. People went from 2.5% to suddenly double that or more. Yeah. And now it doesn't seem so bad, like, 5 or 6%. It doesn't seem so bad, right? I always say, I remember when I first started in real estate, 13.5%. Crazy, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and of course, and they've been higher than that. So yeah,
for sure it has. But you think about that and it's just crazy. So I do think there's some of that where people have just gotten used to it and accustomed themselves. And to Jen's point, also that let's do it, and then if it comes down, well, great, that would be a bonus.
So I want to move forward here, and then we've been talking a lot about the buyers, but I want to talk about seller mentality in a moment. So newly listed homes on the market, there was 3,788, that's detached condo properties in Greater Vancouver for January 2024. This is up 14.5% since this time last year, but it's 9% below the 10-year seasonal average. Now, I don't really look at the 10-year seasonal average for newly listed properties. To me, that's not a very important stat. It's just kind of going over what happened in previous Januaries. But to have an increase in 14.5% of newly listed homes in January is pretty important. So to both of you, where do you think the sellers sit in this equation? We do have rates pausing. You have a little bit more buyer confidence coming into the market. They're more used to the rates being elevated with the potential decrease in rates. What's holding sellers from really jumping forward?
Well, I tell you that I think there's a lot of people who have their toe in the water right now. And that's, again, to Jen's point, what's going to happen in the next 2 months in terms of inventory, if that's really what's happening. But there's a lot of people that want to do something and have been waiting.
What do you think they're waiting for?
Well, I think interest rates played a part. I think they didn't know where they're going because there's no inventory.
Yeah. I think one of I broke a record, the lack of inventory. So what I hear time and time again from people that come to me and want to sell is they say, Jennifer, like I have all the confidence in the Patti Martin team. I have all the confidence that you guys have the best photographer. You know what you're doing. You're going to negotiate the best price. You'll represent my home exactly the way I want it. But where am I going once I sell? And this has been the kind of like phrase that I have to discuss with sellers and say to them, okay, so let's talk about this. Let's say we did sell, and what would it look like if we were able to get you a 3-month closing or a 4-month closing, and give you that time to wait for the right property to pop up. And it's just that understanding of a step-by-step process helps them kind of get there. And but that is, for me, one of the things that sellers have said to me. I'm hesitating because I don't know where I'm going after I sell. I mean, it's different. If they're just liquidating an investment or whatever, there's a whole bunch of things that come up when you're selling a tenanted property. But if you're talking about downsizing or upsizing or anything like that, people want to kind of see where they're going. So that's the hardest part when there's not a lot to choose from, in my opinion.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, you definitely have to take a leap of faith. Either you sell first,
Yeah.
a long close, or you buy first and have a long close to allow you the time to sell.
Yeah.
It kind of puts your stomach in a little bit of a knot, but we're going to get you there. We're going to get you through that finish line.
Yeah, Patti always likes to say she's never had anyone homeless yet.
Never.
So knock on wood.
Knock on
We're
wood.
trying to keep that record going. Yeah.
I do have a few
going.
extra rooms in my house here and there. I don't want to use them.
Further on inventory, the total number of properties listed on the MLS is 8,633. This is up 10% since January 2023, but it's right in line with the seasonal average. So our seasonal average, this one's a little bit more important because our seasonal average for the past, I'm going to say decade, has been quite low. We've always had low inventory, and it's always, I shouldn't say always, for the past 5 years minimum, it's been low inventory. With inventory up 10% since last year, how does this help buyers?
Well, there's more choice.
Yeah, there's more choice. There should, in theory, if there's more inventory, there should be downward pressure on price, and it helps buyers because you can kind of put in a subject removal time. You have that time to think. You have that time to really say, if you're buying a strata property, really look at the documents, ask questions, really know what you're buying. The more inventory, and this is why the government is working so hard to build, why they're trying to create incentives for builders, why they're trying to, cut down on these Airbnbs so that those hopefully become part of the permanent housing instead of the kind of rental housing that is only day by day for, what would normally be a hotel room. So there's all sorts of things that are happening that in fact should increase the inventory, but we're not seeing anything drastic yet. So time will tell.
But again, the buyer has a little more breathing room, which I think right. That's what it is. So they're not having breathing room.
Do you mean
they're maybe not competing, right? They're maybe not competing. I mean, the house today, that's a different story because it's kind of one of those vanilla that everybody, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. But for average product, it might just be one buyer that's buying, and that gives them the chance to make a really informed, sort of more calm decision, which is better.
Well, that's a good segue into our next little portion here, is we're talking about the speed of the market. So we're going to talk about sales to active listing ratios and then days on market. So anytime you have a sales to active listing ratio below, let's say 15%, you're meant to have more downward pressure on pricing and above 20% more upward pressure. So the detached sales to active listing ratio is 12%, townhouse is 23%, and condos are 20% sales to active listing ratio. So we're still early in the year, but it looks like if a buyer can swing it, their best bet is to get into a detached house now, because your sales to active listing ratio is 12%.
If you I've done some evaluations in the last week where I have shown the sellers that while there might be 15 homes for sale that are in a similar price point, they are in no way a similar quality of product or even properly priced. So if I take, normally I say, if there's 400 homes for sale, take out 25% because they're overpriced or they're weird, something's wrong, I don't know. But right now, when I'm doing those evaluations, there might be 15 houses, 13 might not be worth considering as a really an alternative purchase. That there's really only one or two that a buyer would consider seriously,
Right.
for either condition or price.
Are you suggesting that the sales to active listing ratio, when we're talking about, you have these 15 comparables, but 13 are really nothing?
They're never going to sell.
So you have two, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the sales to active listing ratio could actually be a little inflated, is what I'm hearing.
Isn't it deflated? I don't know. I'm going to get all mixed up here, but like it should be higher, because if you really only took the product that was really legitimately a sellable product, then it would have a buyer for it, which would be
Right.
a higher sales to listing ratio. And the only reason we have a lower listing to sale ratio
Because of the
is
extra.
because the product that's there is not real. Not real.
Well, that's another great point, because the days on market right now is the highest it's ever been in the past 4 years. So the average days on market right now is 31. Right, 31 days on
my
market
point.
until you get a home.
Yeah.
Right.
This is to Patty's point that
I'm like, Adam, I'm looking at some of these
base listings are just sitting there.
listing, and some of them, like I'm going through the sale, because like when I do an evaluation, I do my homework, and I'm sitting there explaining this is a house that a buyer could look at besides yours. Oh, but it's been on the market 147 days.
Yeah. So those types of numbers really skew those averages for sure.
Right? And if you do a history search, sometimes it's the third time it's been listed in 300 days. So
Yes.
some of it's not real.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. What I find interesting is that, and I'm going to put an infographic on the screen for here, is when you look at the January days on market, it's always this, you have to spike in days on market. Then February hits and it's a big drop. Like you're going from 30 or 25 or whatever it is in January to like 13, 15 days on market in February. So it goes to show that we're off to a quick start. But my question for you guys is, the market going forward with the limited inventory that we're talking about, are we expecting an early spring market where there's going to be that rush to buy? There's going to be more buyers than there are sellers. What are you guys predicting here?
Is this an early spring market? I think all signs are pointing to that, like January. I think January to June are going to be a consistent time. I do think we are in the spring market. I think people are active. I think the market is active. We see this at our open houses. We have, sometimes groups of 30, 15, 18, whatever it is. And I mean, we're not necessarily receiving offers from every person, but we are seeing a lot of looking and a lot of activity. And then, of course, we are receiving offers. So I do think that this is kind of just the spring market starting really early. I'll be shocked if we see like a big dip. I think there's going to be like a consistent kind of, as long as inventory is there, if there's something for someone to buy, I think people are going to buy it. I think now is the time.
And the only thing that would change that is a massive dump of inventory. And where's that coming from? Not happening.
Yeah, not
happening right now.
It seems to be the same thing we were saying a few months back. The same thing. That real estate is still a strong, optimistic market, and unless you have that dump of inventory, we're talking 16,000+ listings. It's going to continue favoring the sellers in the long run.
Yeah.
That is a lot of information, but I always like to end off on tips for buyers or sellers trying to get into this market. What would you guys do, Jen? If you were helping a buyer today, let's talk about first-time buyer or an upsize or whatever you want to talk about. How would you advise your dream buyer in this market?
Oh gosh, a dream buyer in this market. Well, it's of course to get prepared, right? Preparation to purchase real estate is really key. So speaking with a mortgage professional, understanding whether or not you might have a little bit of help from family, because we often see that being something that helps first-time home buyers become successful is mom and dad or whoever doing some planning, estate planning, and giving that incredible gift to their kids of owning real estate. And yeah, I think preparation, I think knowing, targeting what they want, understanding what it means to be a homeowner, and, understanding that there's benefits. And then there's also like a long-term commitment to paying for this. So it means that they're going to have to work, etc. But it's really about preparation. That first-time home buyer has to really get their finances in order. Because lenders want to see, lenders want to see income from a job, no matter how big the gift is. Yeah.
Awesome. Patti, over to you. We're helping sellers here. What's the best way to be most prepared in this market when you have limited inventory? You potentially have more buyers on the market, but you don't want to set expectations too high. So what do you do?
Well, we ascribe to being prepared ourselves, right? So we show up at your house. I'm not going to tell you something I don't believe. That's never going to happen. So I think I evaluate as I go in. So if it's a house that I know that there's a great gap in a product that matches it, I want people to understand that that's a real gift to them, that they will have so much interest they won't know what to do, and that they'll need our guidance as to how to maximize their dollars. And when people trust us, we are able to exceed their expectations in that regard. So but it doesn't always happen, and there are certain pieces of or certain product that you're not going to see that, and you just have to be really honest about that. I think the people just have to trust us that we will come and give you good advice. And so be prepared in the same way. If you're thinking of selling your home, be prepared, like get it ready. Because when we are ready to go, when it's time, you want to go. You want to get it on the market. You want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just a lot of things sellers can do to get themselves in that position, right? We won't go into it today. Maybe some other time, a deep dive about decluttering and preparing to sell your home.
We have a seminar on that.
Yes, we do.
We do. We do.
Right on. Thank you so much for joining us this month. I look forward to having both of you on next month and making a regular occurrence.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you. Happy buying and selling, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes.